All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Small Business Council. My name is Jenny Najarro. I'm the program manager with the Entrepreneurship and Innovation team here at the Chamber. Before we get started, we want to make sure that you're all muted throughout today's session. We will have a Q&A towards the end, and we ask you that you add your questions into the chat or just wait until the Q&A portion of the program. Today, our speakers will provide an overview of the top website compliance errors and share resources on how to avoid them. In addition to our subject matter experts, we are also joined by small business owner Dora Herrera, owner of Yucas, an authentic Yucatan style restaurant, who was recently targeted for not being ADA compliant on her website. Please join me in welcoming Dora as she shares her experience with us. Welcome, Dora.
Good morning, everyone. So glad that this issue is being addressed, and I'm happy to tell my story to prevent other people from suffering from these predators. Back right before the pandemic, I decided to update my website, and I was thankfully part of an article that someone wrote. And at the end, she asked me, "What do you need?" And I said, website update this. And someone volunteered to update my website. And I had heard about the ADA stuff, so I asked her to be sure to include that in my brand new fantastic website. And she did. And lo and behold, a few years later, I get a lawsuit thrown into my backyard. It wasn't even properly delivered to me or served, which was annoying, but I immediately started talking to different people about a lawyer, and the California Restaurant Association was actually very helpful in providing lawyers that know how to deal with this. And they said, they did it improperly, but basically what you'll be doing is wasting time and money, because it'll take a few weeks, you'll spend a couple of thousand, and you'll still have to deal with it. So you might as well just let them cheat, which unfortunately is the go-to for all these lawsuits. The lawsuit said that my website was not ADA compliant, and that I was purposely preventing people with ADA challenges and issues to access my site and be able to purchase or connect or learn my, it's just horrific. Well, as a member of the LA Chamber, I went to the Pancakes and Politics breakfast where Dee Dee Myers was speaking, and she's the ear of the governor. So I, raised my hand and stood up and raised my hand. She finally called on me as the last question. And I told her my story, and the fact that someone doesn't even have to come into your restaurant or even use your website, but they can sue you for $25,000 right off the bat with no recourse to fix the problem or just do anything other than pay them money. And as we progressed, I found out that this lawyer and the person suing me had over 100 cases that they were pursuing. And I got advice from some judges that I know, being in business for 47 years, we've met a lot of people. And they were telling us not to pay, just let it go till the very last minute. And then these people are not interested in going to court because it takes time and money from them. And they would just drop it. But our stress level was so high that rather than have to go to Kaiser and pay that money, we decided we would just, to make a long story short, we ended up paying $7,500 to the predators and $3,000 to our lawyer, which was especially good price thanks to being a member of the California Restaurant Association. And what I loved about speaking up at the chamber is that someone from a political action group immediately came to me and said, we understand your pain and your frustration. We want to work with you to create something that prevents other people from getting abused. Accenture approached us and said, don't worry, because, you know, I was very emotional at the time. They said, don't worry, we're gonna take a look at your website and make sure that you are no longer in danger of being sued by other people. Because sometimes when you're sued, people see that and then they come in and sue you for exactly the same thing without having to do any research because somebody else has got a lawsuit. And, you know, I got 3 or 4 people approaching me through the chamber at the Pancakes of Politics, and it was fabulous. It just kind of felt like I'm not alone. Somebody's got my back. Things are going to happen. I talked to Dee Meyer's office, and she was very involved. And then I called Senator Susan Rubio, California senator, and she also had her person call me. And, you know, so everything was, I felt like we weren't just going to sit there and take it anymore. I'm a part of Regarding Her. It's a women chef and entrepreneur organization. And I brought it up during a meeting, and they were like, oh girl, I've been sued twice, and, you know, I'll probably get sued again. And I thought, no, we don't really need to make this a normal thing, that it's okay for people to steal from us just because the ADA is not very clear on when we're compliant, what we need to do to get compliant, how to update, or, you know, like even notices about, hey, this thing changed, so now you need to update your website, or you know, when you create a new website, to have guidelines as to what needs to be done in order to have it, to have you be compliant. So that's my story. I'm very happy that we got rid of the lawsuit. Unfortunately, we had to pay, but when I got the invite to come here, I was beyond happy and joyful that the chamber is doing something about this, and I look forward to supporting it, even flying to Sacramento or wherever to be there to make sure that people stop getting abused. Oh, and one more thing. I love the ADA law. I think it's a very necessary thing for us to have. And it's the people that are abusing the law that we're addressing, not the service that the ADA does for many people in the United States and worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dora, for bringing awareness about your experience. I think it's super important that, you know, all businesses, small businesses in particular, have access to this information. And thank you for leading the way for change. So thank you so much for sharing. And today we're really fortunate to have speakers from Accenture and 3 Plates Design here to talk through this issue and how we can prevent other small business owners from making the same mistakes. Our first 2 speakers are Louise and Tiger from Accenture. Louise is the global lead for Accenture's AI-powered Grow SMB solution. She focuses on helping global enterprise companies help their clients, small and medium businesses, thrive and grow in our digital economy. Through extensive SMB research, exploration, discovery, and partnership, Louise leads the development of solutions to help SMBs navigate and manage today's complex landscape and determine the best processes and platforms for each business. She is also joined today by her colleague, Tiger, who has a background in computer sciences and artificial intelligence. He is passionate about bringing positive impacts of technology to small and medium businesses to support their growth and helping businesses stay ahead of the curve in today's rapidly evolving digital landscape. So welcome, Louise and Tiger.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here and to have this opportunity. As you notice, both Tiger and I have a data and AI background, but we're very passionate about small businesses. And we see that as a tight connection because, there's 30 million SMBs in the United States, right? President Biden said on a recent State of the Union that over 10 million had just been created in the past 2 years. When you're talking about this magnitude of businesses, of employment, of people, data and AI becomes really important. And so, how to best enable this massive amount of information and needs from an SMB community is an area that at Accenture we really care a lot about. So we help a lot of our large enterprise clients focus on how to best help their SMB clients succeed and thrive. For today's discussion, we had been talking, we got connected with Dora after this, story that she told from the Pancakes and Politics. Tiger and I, helped her scan through her webpage and understand the areas that had had gotten kind of flagged from the Web Content Accessibility Guideline as marked as errors. And we went through some quick areas in order to fix and get her, compliant, if you will, while she was making bigger, broader changes to her website. And that's an approach that many today here across the small business members could do as well. To many of the errors that we've seen can be addressed fairly quickly, but it can become really overwhelming when you think about it and you see hundreds of errors on the list. So what we had offered to do here was scan through the websites of the Small Business Chamber members for LA. We were given about a list of about 500 businesses, about 472 or 477 of them had actual websites that we were able to look at. And of those, we did the scan, 472 of them, so all but 4 or 5 had errors. And so, which was a lot, right? 99%, almost every single one of the websites we looked at had some, at least, one. The majority of them had more than 10 errors around the web accessibility and the ADA compliance. So what we show here on this slide is really just an overview of what were the top errors. So again, almost 86%, vast majority had errors around contrast. And Chrissy will be talking after me around getting into details about what each of these do and how to fix it and why it matters. But things like contrast can help, somebody who has visual impairment might have trouble seeing, or the missing alternative text. Almost half the web, or more than half the websites had the missing alternative text. So if you have a screen reader, it's difficult to be able to understand, or again, you're using a screen reader to be able to know what that image is trying to convey if you don't have that alternate text. And an area where it can get overwhelming for some businesses is they might end up having, 50 or so errors listed, but it's all on this one thing, the alternative text. This happened with Dora, where she had a lot of errors listed, but a lot of it was the missing alternative text. And so we just went through together and Dora described what was on the image in the text, and we got it done over, a few hours, I would say. And it makes a big, and it was easy for her because she obviously was no problem to describe what was the picture trying to convey. We updated it on the website. She went and did that also on her own. And then that really helped people who were using a screen reader to be able to read that. So again, although it might look like, wow, that's a lot of errors, it could all just be like on these 3 types of things that can be relatively easy to update. Same thing with the empty link. So, just having that text of describing what the link is doing for the screen readers and whatnot can be really, really helpful. And so overall, through the rest of this session, we'll go into a lot more details on these types of errors and how to fix them. But we wanted to just highlight, you're not alone out there if you find that your website has these errors. This is a really common thing. Many of the businesses, this isn't something that you're thinking about or that might be top of mind for you, but it is important, and it's important to understand. So you're not alone, right? There's almost every single one of the websites that we looked at had these types of errors, but it also is something that can be addressed relatively easily. We can also send as a follow along to this session. We've created some quick reference guides for folks that are using WordPress on how to make these corrections. About like 100 or so of the websites that we reviewed did use WordPress. So that would be helpful to a good portion of the community. And so it's something that you can work on to improve the accessibility of your website. And then, why does it matter? Really, it just helps you to have this better customer experience to a wider, broader, bigger audience that can be, visiting you and understanding and learning about your business. And then, of course, also we want to prevent any of these, predatory lawsuits that we've been seeing come up, like that happened to Dora and which she shared. So with that, I can pass it to, is it Chrissy who was going to go next to go through the details?
Yes, so thank you so much, Louise and Tiger. Definitely want to introduce Christina Moses and Adam Weiss. Christina is the president of 3 Shades, which has a proven track record of working closely with companies in a broad range of industries, from housing to high tech, political to the nonprofit, and legal to transportation since 2009. Working within this range has given 3 Shades a unique perspective of how to integrate both public and private interests in their messaging and marketing. Christina thrives on the successful cultivation of initiative, leadership, collaboration, and honesty. Christina takes tremendous satisfaction in all aspects of the creative process and in helping clients identify and develop individualized branding and marketing messages and ensuring their websites and apps are up to today's design and accessibility standards. We are also joined by Adam Weiss, whose passion since 1995 has been web development. Building web expertise at Deloitte and Touche, Sony Pictures, Global Real Estate, RMS, and universities. Adam honed his skills since 2009. Adam has his finger on the pulse of web innovation, continuously enhancing his skill to cover his clients' state-of-the-art solutions. An expert in front-end and back-end development, accessibility, databases, and server infrastructures, he has either personally developed or has been involved in developing every website launched for his clients. So welcome, Christina and Adam.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jenny, for the introduction, and to the Chamber for having us here today. As mentioned, I'm Christina Moses with 3 Shades Design, and I have my colleague Adam Weiss here with me today. So we're here to talk a little bit more about what website accessibility is. And if we could advance to the next slide, that'd be great. There's been a lot of talk about, the legal ramifications of what this means to small businesses. And you're going to hear us say this a lot, but we're not attorneys. So we aren't going to provide any legal advice. All we can do is really share our understanding of what website accessibility means to small businesses and then the websites that they have published. So when we step back and look at it from a bigger perspective, inaccessible web content means that people with disabilities are denied equal access to information. And because so much of our lives and services offered have moved online, that can exclude a lot of people from services and support that they need. And so originally, accessibility laws were created for government websites, but as we've heard and seen, many recent rulings have made this an issue that now impacts public and private sector companies, associations, organizations, businesses, which is why we're here to talk about it today. So in the next slide, you'll see that as a business case, this is really important. There is about 1 billion people in the world that have a recognized disability. So in the US, it's about 56 million people, which is 1 in 5 people. That's a lot of people that are trying to access your site that may have some kind of challenge doing so. And then what we hope is that in the way that you think about responsiveness for your site, security on your site, you're going to also start thinking about accessibility of your site. Because we don't really want to leave behind nearly 1 in 5 people in the US to see what your company has to offer. The next slide. So in our understanding as non-lawyers, that this really revolves around the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and specifically the Section 508. That's at the federal level, and California has gone even further to ensure there's additional governance to ensure high standards of accessibility across the board. And as Luis has mentioned, there is a web standard called the Website Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0. There's 3 levels there. You're aiming for level AA. Level A won't be enough. AAA is very, very difficult and expensive to achieve. And so from our perspective, when we're looking at sites, what we're trying to do is to make sure that regardless of what the legal requirements are, that your site integrates accessibility, because it'll not only benefit those users with any sort of disability, but it actually benefits all users coming to your site. So the next slide, we'll see that ADA is the new normal. We're just going to have to make sure that this becomes part of our perspective when we're reviewing our sites for redesigns, when we're taking a look at and doing, our quarterly checks on sites, things like that, that this is something we take into consideration. The challenge for many small businesses, and we see this a lot with our clients, is that it's really confusing. We don't know, the laws are changing, there's a different interpretation, there's a lot of predatory lawsuits that are out there. And so it can be very, very confusing. Fortunately, at least on the policy side, we have the LA Chambers policy team really looking hard at this and how the legislation or regulations around this can be addressed specifically around, and I think the team will talk about it more, but it will be really helpful around how fines are assessed, how much time you have to fix it. But there is, as Dora mentioned, support for you, and this is something that Chamber takes very seriously. So on the next slide, what we're really looking at is the main goal here. What's the business case for really looking at accessibility on your website? And for us, it's so that people can use your site, simply put. When you look at the market of people with disabilities, it's large and it's growing worldwide, especially as the population ages. And in the US, there's an annual discretionary spending of people with disabilities is about $200 billion. So by not addressing it, you're just leaving a lot of money on the table. And studies show that accessible websites have better search results. They reach a bigger audience. They're SEO friendly. They have faster download times, and they encourage good coding practices, something near and dear to Adam's heart. And all of these things help make your site more usable to all users, and that is a good thing. So now we kind of talked about the overall view. I'm going to turn it over to Adam to talk a little bit more about some of the common errors that were mentioned and how they could be addressed. So Adam, turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Christine. I appreciate it. Let's go ahead and head on to the next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of those most common errors that we see on websites, and we'll talk about some of the other ones that aren't so common, and really, more importantly, how to fix them and how to keep websites accessible. So alt properties. So anytime you see an image on a website, you're seeing it, right? You know what's there. And sometimes those images convey important information. Sometimes they're a design element. If you can't see that image and you don't have an alt tag, you don't know if you're missing something important or if it's really just some design element. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. In this particular case, this photograph, if it were on a website, if it were part of a design, it would convey something that gives you this feeling. And so an alt tag could be a woman gazing at rows of glowing paper lanterns on a Hong Kong street at dusk. That gives the person a feeling for what's on that website, and it enables them to experience it in the same way that someone with vision might. And that's important, because if that image, in fact, didn't have anything worthwhile, then they wouldn't know. They might be missing something important. So alt tags, it's an easy fix. And if you go through your website, again, use something like Wave or Power Mapper or some tool to see which images are missing those alt tags. It's a very easy fix to go through and add alt tags to all the images. And you'll probably get some good writing experience too doing it. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Form labels. So when you visit any kind of form on a website, let's go ahead and go to the next slide so you can see, you'll notice that a form has obviously the area where you put your text. Sometimes there'll be placeholder text inside that, but in this particular case, to the left, there's a label. Code allows someone who is not sighted to see that, I say see, to read, to hear that form label and know what that next field is supposed to be. So many forms out there don't have that. There's an assumption that you'll know that this is the name field or that this is another field, or the label won't be implemented properly. So that in that case, the label is not associated with that field. So if you're cited, you might see first name and know it. But if you're not cited, then you don't. And that's a big issue, because if you need to fill out a form, whether it's to get contact information or even to go through a shopping cart process, you're probably not going to just randomly fill out a form if you don't know what those labels mean. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Text cues. Let's go to the next slide. This one's a pretty fun one because, and it's a shame that the color here got changed. So headers on a website are supposed to be larger, and there's a hierarchy of headers. If you know anything about HTML, you may have seen H1, H2, all the way through H6. Those convey an importance of information and, more importantly, a structure. Some websites put them out of order, which make them a little more confusing to someone who's using a screen reader. Links are supposed to be underlined. One of our clients once said, "Why do you hate underlined text?" Well, the answer is that we don't want text to be confused with that is a link. So we avoid having underlined text that's not a link and really focus on making sure the links are either visually very obviously a link, or we underline them, because that's what a lot of people expect. They expect links to be underlined. And there's, of course, exceptions to this. We can have essentially buttons. Buttons are obviously, they have a visual outline, or they have other elements that allow you to see that they are something that's clickable or interactive. We can also add emphasis. That would be an EM tag, EM for emphasis, or a strong tag, which used to be bold. And the idea is that someone who's hearing that via a screen reader will hear the screen reader add, "This is an emphasis." And that's really helpful in some cases, because otherwise it's just reading a particular sentence or phrase without any other kind of emphasis when it might actually be important. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And keyboard navigation. So someone who is not sighted is probably not going to be using a mouse or a touch screen, because they can't see what they are looking at. So ensuring that a website is optimized for keyboard navigation is important. This includes something called skip navigation. It includes logical tab indexing. If you go to a website that has a lot of information in the header, and your screen reader will read all of it. It'll read the menus, it'll read the introduction, it'll read all this stuff. And if you're navigating through a website frequently is using a screen reader, you don't want to hear that read every single time. And so being able to use your keyboard to skip that navigation and skip to content, which is what it's called, will enable that person to more appropriately experience the content for that particular website. If the tabbing is out of order, meaning if you're navigating through the page with your keyboard and it goes in an illogical order, it's going to make it very confusing, because you can't see where you are on the page. You're relying on your screen reader to tell you where you are. So if your keyboard navigation skips you to the end of a page and then back to the front and then maybe to a form, that's going to lead to a very negative experience for them. It's not accessible, and they're probably going to bounce out of your website and not utilize your services or contact you. We can skip 2 slides. So looking at the web content accessibility guidelines, this here is essentially, if you will, the Bible for what we use to determine whether or not a website is accessible. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. This is a screenshot of some of those guidelines. It is dense. I highly recommend Googling WCAG 2.1 AA guidelines, and you'll see a list like this, and it spells out 4 sections, and really it feels like thousands, but it's probably closer to hundreds of different guidelines that your website has to follow. Some of them are very easy, or some of them don't apply to your website. If you don't have video, you don't need subtitles. But really going through a set of guidelines like this will show you how important all these little elements are and why. So again, I recommend that you go to this. We can probably drop a link to this as well. In fact, I will drop a link into the chat right now so that you can look and see this exact set of guidelines to see whether or not your website actually follows these. This here is what all those scanning tools use to determine whether or not your website is accessible. Any one of these guidelines, again, up to AA, not AAA, because AAA, like Christina said, is virtually impossible. You will be open to a lawsuit, or someone's just not going to be able to experience the website the way that you'd really like them to. And that's pretty important. So what this comes down to is how we're going to fix it. Next slide, please. I want to show you a couple basic things in how we fix websites, and how, if you hire a firm, how they'll do it, and really how you could potentially do some of the work yourself. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So up here in the top left is the Chamber's website, and that is with the Wave tool. And all you do is you install that in Chrome, you click the button, and it'll show you all the little issues that there might be on the website. Ideally, you'll see no issues. You might see some warnings as well, but really the red issues are what's important. What we would do is we'd look at each one of those issues, we see where it is in code, we fix it in the code, which is in this little cycle here, and then we test again. And we go through this over and over and over again until we have all the issues resolved. Then we move on to testing it using a screen reader. If you have a Mac, you have a screen reader built in. It's Command-Shift F5. That will automatically turn on your screen reader. It will annoy you because it'll start speaking to you and everything on your whole screen. But I recommend looking at a website, your website, using that screen reader to hear what someone with a screen reader is experiencing. Just because a website doesn't have any issues on Wave or on one of your testing tools does not mean that it is actually accessible. You need to experience your website as someone who is not sighted to fully wrap your head around what that experience will be like, to make sure that it truly is accessible so they're having a good website experience. You've probably been to websites that you can use, but you don't like it because it doesn't look good or the design's not great. It's kind of the same idea. You're designing to someone's ear and not necessarily to their eyes, and it's good to experience that. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. After this process, your site's accessible. Yay! But we're not done yet. Let's go to the next slide. One of the most important things we've seen is we could deliver a website that is accessible, but it can fall out of compliance. Let's go to the next slide. So there's a few things that you can do to stay accessible. The first is to regularly look to see that your website is accessible. Regularly run those checks either using Wave or PowerMapper or any of those other tools that are available to make sure that your whole website is accessible. You can even set up those scans to happen automatically. They'll send you a report, and if you see an issue, you can fix it. Training your team will also help considerably. If you teach your team how to make sure they're adding alt tags, how to make sure they're adding any of the simple elements they have access to in a way that is accessible, will save you, especially if an attorney happens to visit your website in a time where something was not necessarily accessible. Training is absolutely, positively critical. A stopgap or tools that you can use to essentially fill in the blanks or Accessiby, UserWay, I think there's an equal sign. There's a ton of tools that are like these, where they're essentially a drop-in plugin. For a few $100s a year, these tools will allow a JavaScript to go in and fix some of the issues that are on the websites. I would not rely 100% on these tools to keep you out of a lawsuit. Most attorneys are using tools like PowerMapper to just figure out whose websites have issues. PowerMapper does not turn on Accessiby. It does not turn on UserWay. So if you have one of these tools with the intent to fix everything, you will still get sued. You'll still end up having to pay an attorney to deal with it. However, these will help fill in the gaps. It will help with contrast issues. It will help with certain other elements, adding skip links, and really, in general, making the website easier to navigate. These are much better for experiential really helping the experience of someone who is disabled in some way. So I highly recommend looking into one of these tools because they really help someone's actual experience. Again, if you're trying to avoid a lawsuit, they may not help as much as you would like, but I know, and I don't know about UserWay, but I know Accessiby does have a team that will help with lawsuits if it does end up happening. But again, I wouldn't rely on those. Let's go ahead and go to I think that might be our last slide, is it? Yes. And I'm happy to answer any and all questions that you might have, as long as they're not assuming I'm an attorney, because I'm not.
Just to reiterate, we're not attorneys.
We're not attorneys.
But please feel free to reach out with any questions, and we'll turn it back over to Jenny.
Thank you both so much for your incredible insights and expertise. We are also joined today by our Senior Vice President, Chief of Policy, Patricia Bruno, who will now do a brief overview of a legislative proposal that the Chamber is currently working on. So welcome, Patricia.
Are you guys, you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So yes, based on some of the stories that were shared today, we did end up introducing a bill, AB 1404, authored by Wendy Carrillo, Assemblywoman Wendy Carrillo, to address the issues that have been discussed here. So first, we wanted to create an opportunity for small businesses who were not aware that they had any issues or that were not compliant. We are providing a 60-day period where they can rectify the issue. Also, we heard that the fees were, for the citation fees were very exorbitant and, had huge impacts on their business. So each citation is currently $4,000. So if you have multiple citations, you could, owe $8,000 or $12,000. So that was a major impact to these small businesses. So we are reducing the fee. We are proposing to reduce the fee to $25. So, those are kind of the two major elements of the bill that we hoped would help small businesses. So the bill is currently going through the legislative process. It's currently in Judiciary Committee, and we are getting some feedback that we're going to continue to work on the bill to see if we can continue to advance it. But we do understand the concerns that were raised, and we're hoping that we are able to advance, this bill or version of this bill to really address some of the key issues that have been raised by the small businesses, especially those that have been targeted, for not having compliant websites. I guess that concludes my remarks, and I'll see if anyone has questions.
Great, thank you so much, Patricia. We will hold our Q&A session now, and I will pass it over to Peter.
Hi, good afternoon. Peter Fu, Vice President, Entrepreneurship and Workforce. I hope that everybody had a great session, definitely informative. Even as a former IT professional, I was totally confused. So I can't imagine all our small businesses out there not being confused even after this session. So I think please take in, get the information from everybody, Adam, ourselves, Dora, every resources that we have right now, and please reach out to us in the future. That being said, I welcome anybody to unmute themselves to ask any questions that have not been addressed yet. Anybody? Okay, if there's no other,
Sorry.
go ahead.
This is Linda Rosenberg with CMTC. We partner with the Chamber, and we're a nonprofit that helps small to mid-sized California manufacturers. With regard to the alt tags, for example, if a site has hundreds or thousands of products and isn't compliant, is there any type of solution that is at all automated or AI based, or does it just have to be done manually?
It depends on, and I hope you don't mind that I'm jumping in and answering this. It depends on the website. If you have a product page that is being dynamically generated, very often you're able to utilize part of that. Obviously, you don't want alt tags to all be the same, but there's a chance that if you have any kind of consistency with your product photos, that could work. I know that Accessibility and I believe Userway also implement alt tags using AI. They scan the website, they look at the image, and they try to determine what's in those images. But, and this is the big but, if you're trying to make sure that your products are being sold appropriately, you want to make sure that those alt tags really do describe the products to a deep level that someone who would want to know what's in there would be. And so that way they know they're not missing any product information. Some people put data sheets into their product images. You want that alt tag to reflect, if maybe not all the data, but at least describe what's in that. It would actually be very helpful for those folks.
Thank you.
And also I would say, like, with the personality too, like that user experience aspect, like going back to Dora, like some of her alt text was like, my family, arms smiling, happy moments, you know what I mean? Like the describing the emotion as well that some of these images are trying to convey, that I don't know that, I mean, we're getting there from a generative AI perspective, but I don't think we're right there yet, right? So, you know, or at least in the specific ones that you really want to maybe have some thoughtfulness around to take the time versus the automated alt text.
Yeah, yeah.
And just
thank you.
adding on to that, just make sure as a best practice, whenever you do upload new content, you're always inserting an alt tag. So moving forward, your new content, you know, it's already in there. There may be
Mhm.
instances where you have to go back and fill in some, but moving forward, make sure that's why
Yeah,
employee training is really important, that they know how to correctly, whoever is going to make those updates on your site knows how to correctly upload it in the first place. It's sort of
Yeah.
like any kind of data. You put good, clean data in, you get good, clean data out. So
yeah, totally makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions? I actually have a quick question. I've been playing with ChatGPT and multiple AI platforms in the last 6 months or so. And, you know, obviously it's a game changer. And I know that AI has been going on for decades, you know, start with Watson, et cetera. But it seems like it's something that's being brought up in the public. So I was just wondering if this is a tool that can be interfaced between the website to help them, one, maintain it, but also kind of helping them keep compliant, saying, hey, you might be out of compliance because of this.
Yes, I mean, I think there's high potential there. I mean, one thing that's interesting, you know, the web hosting, the Shopify, WordPress, GoDaddy, etc., right? They all have libraries and self-help on how to have ADA compliant websites within their hosting properties. But you, as a user, if you're not even aware of it as a problem, you don't know to go search it out to get these helps, right? I think I just read GoDaddy just created a generative AI library available for its small, I'll put the article, I think it literally just came out yesterday, for its small and medium business users. So I think we'll start to see that more and more, Peter. But part of it is like, I think just an awareness situation for the small businesses to know that this is something that they need to be aware of to take care of. And right now the hosting companies have a lot of help, but they're not, I think, to make it easy to create a website, they're not enforcing that the website must be ADA compliant, that the enforcement part and the compliance part isn't something that they've made mandatory as part of their website creation. And my hunch is that they want it to make it quick and easy to make a website. So it's like that balance, if that's helpful there.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Any questions? So I just wanted to, yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Is there anything we can do to help move this forward or support it or make it go a little faster or get the word out?
That's a Patricia question.
Are you talking about the issue or are you talking about the bill?
Both, you know, I mean, I've been talking to every networking event I go to, I bring it up, and I've seen other graphic designers starting to have Zoom meetings about this issue. So
Well, yeah, no,
that's-
Dora, I think that's a great question. I think as everyone's here is the awareness, and I think that's why we're having this session today, is to raise awareness. But yeah, I agree, because, you know, regardless of what's happening at state level with the bill, there's current laws in place. And so how do we raise awareness with other small businesses and other businesses that, you know, to bring this to their attention? So, and I think, you know, so I don't know how we get, you know, and I guess that's more small business council. I mean, the small business group, you know, do we have multiple events like this? You know, how do we, you know, we brought this up to the city and raised this issue as well. And, you know, to see if the city can do something. But yes, I think you're right, Dora. There, you know, regardless of what the bills, you know, the bill is going through the process, but currently there's current law in place now. So, you know, how do we avoid other businesses getting into the same situation that you were in? So yeah, I agree with you. How do we raise awareness about this issue? And I think having events like this, like we're having today, I think is one way, but I guess I'll leave it to Peter and to Andrea to answer the question about, you know, what other events to raise awareness for small businesses now that, you know, as the bill is going through the process.
Yeah, and it's also a federal law. So can we work in, at the same time, or do we fix the problem here first and then try to get the federal government to move a little bit on
Well,
that issue also, or?
Well, the thing is, we did look into that, and that we were kind of told that that would be very much more complicated to focus on the state level. So, because that was the initial proposal, was to get it done at the federal level. But then we were redirected to focus on the state because it's probably a lot less complicated to get it to the state. And so yes, this is a complicated issue, and there's a lot of winners and losers in this. And so yes, we can definitely I mean, the policy team is working on advancing this at the state level. But yes, I agree with you, Dora, 100%. We do need to raise awareness about how small businesses how they can avoid getting into the same situation that you faced.
Yeah, thank you so much, Patricia, for all the efforts that the policy team at the Chamber is doing to affect change through legislation. And yes, and to your point, echo that from a programmatic standpoint, we really want to get the word out that this issue exists, and to help as many small businesses in the community to know what needs to be done to be ADA compliant. So thank you, Dora, for that question. Excellent. I know Megan also had a question in the chat. Megan, do you want to unmute and ask your question as well?
Hi, everyone. Sorry, my name is Megan. I work in with business in the Little Tokyo area. I'm going to keep my camera off. It's a little choppy on my end, but no, I think someone included the fact sheet, which I didn't read initially, and I think I found the answer at the bottom. I was just kind of more curious about legacy businesses who don't quite understand. But I think I got my answer, and I can look into it further. So thank you.
Yeah, Megan, again, please reach out if you need any further resources. We'd be happy to help. I mean, we're also, as a chamber, we're kind of jumping on board thanks to Dora. Obviously, a very critical issue for small businesses. I totally understand the challenges that are faced because of my mom's small businesses. And granted, it wasn't a web-based, but it was the old school ADA, frivolous lawsuits and stuff like that. So please reach out. So final call for Q&A. Any questions? Any questions for anybody on the call?
Yes. One quick comment. Tiger just dropped into the chat. With our work with Dora, we created this sort of cheat sheet quick reference guide for WordPress for fixing some of those errors. So if you have built your website on WordPress, which we saw was over 100 of the ones that we analyzed did, you could, feel welcome to try this PD, open up this file and use that as a, potential quick reference guide. Also, of course, if you'd like to reach out to me or Tiger, or I'm sure we'd love to follow up or answer any questions or get into this more. This is an area that we're all really passionate about.
Thanks, Luis. The cheat sheet provided is really helpful, and it's still a very confusing topic. So we understand that this is sort of the tip of the iceberg, but we hope this provided a little bit of clarity and maybe some areas that you can easily start with. And again, as mentioned before, if you have a question, feel free to reach out at any time. Don't hesitate. We're happy to just even chat with you if something comes up.
And you'll be sending out the slides and the recording as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Dora, thank you for sharing your experience. Sorry for what you went through.
Yeah, let's just go fix it. I'm ready.
Great. So a couple of housekeeping. Can you please drop your contact information into the chat for those that are participating? And again, thank you for everybody from Accenture, Christina, Louise, Tiger, and I apologize. Was it Henry?
3 Shades.
Yes.
And Adam.
Thank you. Adam, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. If nothing else, no other questions, again, if you have any questions, please reach out, and then I will hand it over back to Jenny.
Yeah. Thank you everyone again so much for this valuable information. Just a couple of quick announcements. So we are still providing our free Resilient Business Advising Program, which provides one-on-one mentorship and access to capital and other resources regarding how to build your business. And we will actually, this is a list of our advisors, so they all have different expertise. And we will actually be hosting our next Small Business Strong on this topic, just so you can get more information on the program itself and meet our advisors. So that will be on April 26th. And then finally, we have our Verizon Small Business Digital Ready program. So that's also free to you and it gives you different access to curriculum based on your needs for your business. So we will make sure to send a recap of this session today with all of the links to these resources. And we hope you have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye.